is the EPA. When I first began here at InfoWars, it was, as a story was breaking, this was something that was originally turned up by junkscience.com. Steve Malloy at junkscience.com had filed some FOIA requests. He saw some interesting reports that looked kind of strange to him, and he probed a little bit further with some FOIA requests, and he found out that the EPA in North Carolina was actually conducting human experiments and doing it without informed consent, doing things that were very dangerous, especially according to what the EPA had testified before Congress. We've got a clip of EPA's director at the time, Lisa Jackson, talking to Congressman Markey at the time, and listen to this dialogue back and forth. They've already worked up what they're going to say, and so Congressman Markey is feeding her information about how this is more dangerous than cancer. What they're talking about is fine particulate matter, 2.5 millimeters, or maybe it's nanometers. Anyway, it's small particulate matter, and of course Dr. Dunn can clarify that for us. But listen to what they said in the congressional testimony.
Cumulatively, what are the benefits of cleaning up particulate matter? Does that help or hurt our efforts to battle cancer, to battle the impact that it has upon the health of people in our country?
Particulate matter or soot causes premature deaths. It doesn't make you sick. It's directly causal to dying sooner than you should. So
it doesn't make you sick, it kills you.
Efforts, cost-effective efforts, I might add, to address particulate matter are more people dying sooner than they should.
How would you compare it to the fight against cancer? Reducing particulate matter.
Yeah, I was briefed not long ago. If we could reduce particulate matter to healthy levels, it would have the same impact as finding a cure for cancer in our country.
Can you say that sentence one more time?
Yes, sir. If we could reduce particulate matter to levels that are healthy, we would have an identical impact to finding a cure for cancer.
That's a pretty good cumulative impact.
Yeah, it's also questionable whether or not that's true. But if it is true, what they did in these human experiments, if this is something that kills more people than cancer, if this is something that doesn't just make you sick, but kills you, what they did in their experiments at the University of North Carolina, and then what they subsequently did to children in California, and now what they're starting to do to asthmatic African-American teenagers, they're continuing the experiments in North Carolina. If, in fact, it does kill you, not just make you sick, then what they're doing is criminal, because they're exposing people to over 70 times the limit that they have said would kill you. Let's go to Dr. Dunn and have him break this down for us. Welcome, Dr. Dunn.
Thank you for having me. I want to make one correction. I don't practice law. I'm a non-practicing attorney, and I may have put that down wrong in the biography that I sent to you.
You've got it, and I read it wrong. Sorry. Yes.
I graduated from law school in 1979. But I never have practiced law. I just took the bar exams in the places where I lived just so that I could say that I was a member of the bar, and never had any intention of having clients in the practice of law.
I understand. Nevertheless, with your interest in law and as a physician, you're interested in medical ethics. Tell us about this experiment with the EPA and what you have concerns about.
We discovered that the EPA admits under oath in a lawsuit that we filed to try to stop the human experiments at the University of North Carolina that there are 10 medical schools in the United States that have been doing human exposure experiments with air pollutants in laboratories to see if they could cause any harm to the subjects. Then they would report it as proof that these air pollutants are toxic. This whole colloquy between Ms. Jackson and Congressman Markey is a setup, and it follows what has been the theme of the EPA for about 20 years. Small particles in the air are toxic, lethal, and cause cancer, and there is no safe level. So if you apply an ethical standard to it, you have to consider it to be a situation where human experiments would not be allowed under any even tortured interpretation of the law in the United States and international law, as well as all the recommendations of international groups in regards to human experimentation. The problem of human experimentation was made acutely a consideration in the post-World War II era, and the Nuremberg trials included trials of about 20 physicians who were involved in the most notorious of the human experiments that the Nazis did. It wasn't the whole list of doctors who may have been involved in human experiments that were unethical and immoral and illegal and criminal, but these were the guys who organized and led these experimental groups. And they did things like take people's arms off to see if they could transplant them to somebody else. And, of course, naturally, the patient died. They did what was considered to be extremely harmful and horrific experiments on freezing. What they did was they put people in freezing water to see if they could be revived from the point where they were dead. There were all kinds of human experiments that were done by Nazi physicians, and it resulted in the Nuremberg Code. The Nuremberg Code is a list of rules for physicians and researchers in regards to doing a human experiment, and it prohibits any human experiments that might be harmful to the subject. You cannot consent to a human experiment that is going to cause you harm.
Exactly. And, of course, now today
for your kids either.
That's right. And, of course, today we're hearing many on the left, even Fox News, saying, well, you know, if you don't want to get your MMR vaccine, I don't need to get your informed consent. I can just make you take it. But we've seen this history. It's not just Nazi Germany. This happened in the United States, of course, with the famous or the infamous Tuskegee experiments, where they did not inform these people that they were giving them syphilis. And
well, you know, race was the reason why the Tuskegee experiments were considered to be extraordinarily offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But understand this. There were experiments conducted by the CIA
yes,
in regards to mind-bending drugs like LSD.
mm-hmm.
And they were done, in some cases, on staff of the CIA without their knowledge, just to see what would happen if you gave them a hallucinogenic drug to see what happened. And unfortunately, one of the CIA staffers, when it happened to him, it was so upsetting to him that he committed suicide by throwing himself out of a window.
Yes, that book was, I think, a terrible mistake. What was the guy's name? Guys, can you...
You know his name? My goodness.
Yeah, actually, there was...
You are a real researcher. In any event, there are human experiments with regards to yellow fever, with regards to tuberculosis, with regards to leprosy.
Yes.
That no longer are considered to be acceptable in ethical terms, moral terms, or legal terms. There are criminal offenses involved in exposing someone to a harmful substance intentionally.
Yes, absolutely.
Either by a criminal intent, or in this case, research that might be done on human subjects. Now.
And that, hang on, we got to go to a commercial break. Just to let people know before we go to the commercial break, that is a terrible mistake. It was a story of Frank Olson, who was working with the biological chemical experiments. They had brought over many war criminals from Nazi Germany, from Japan, to head up that biological chemical research, and as part of Operation Paperclip. But of course, there's numerous examples, as Dr. Dunn has pointed out. When we come back, we're going to talk about the aspect of this as to what the EPA has kind of painted themselves into a corner where they either have to admit that they were lying to us about the danger of fine particulate matter 2.5, or they were lying to the patients and violated the Nuremberg rules as well as national criminal prohibitions against that. Dr. Dunn, give us a quick take on where we're going to go with this after the break when we look at the rules that they violated.
Well, I'd like to make sure that the people who are listening understand that small particulate matter is probably not lethal, as the EPA claims it is, and that there was always a wink and a nod about this. They were saying on the one hand to the public and to the Congress, oh, my goodness, we need to control small particulate air pollution because it's going to kill as many people as cancer does, when in fact they knew that was a lie. And I would like to talk to people about the research that was funded by the EPA that produced that lie.
Absolutely. But the issue is, and I agree with you, I don't think it is nearly as dangerous as the EPA says that it is. They exposed people to levels that were 70 times higher than they said would kill people. It didn't kill people. Nevertheless, what is really important is that they could establish a precedent that they don't need to get people's informed consent for something that they say could kill you. If they can do it for something that isn't a real threat, they can do it for something that really is a threat to your health. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Dr. John Dunn talking about medical ethics and informed consent. Hey. The American Council on Science and Health, his current editor for junkscience.com. And that's the capacity in which we're calling him right now, because it was junkscience.com that broke the information about EPA human testing. As we pointed out in the last segment, we had Lisa Jackson, who was the EPA director at the time, talking to Congressman Markey, saying that particulate matter was not something that would just make you sick, it would kill you. Nevertheless, even though we don't believe that that was true, we believe the EPA was overstating the danger of fine particulate matter. Nevertheless, using their own information, they proceeded to do human experimentation on people without their informed consent, not telling them what the dangers are, not telling them that you're going to be exposed to 70 times the fine particulate matter that we say will kill you. That's the issue right here. So whether or not it was something that was a danger to them, nevertheless, we have established a precedent where the government can come in and subject you to something that the government believes and says is going to kill you. That's the really dangerous thing here, in my opinion. The lack of informed consent, and as Dr. Dunn was pointing out, you cannot legally give informed consent for something that is that dangerous, something that is going to permanently harm or kill you. You cannot legally give informed consent for yourself or for your children. Dr. Dunn, you were getting ready to talk as we ran out of time about the actual issues of fine particulate matter. Go ahead.
Well, you have to understand that the reason this is important is that for 20 years, the EPA has been increasingly aggressive in regulating emissions from smokestacks and emissions from vehicles, and it was always on the basis of the fact that they were going to save all these lives. Mm-hmm. That emissions of various kinds had small particulates in them, and that those small particulates, according to the EPA, were proven by research to be killing people. Well, the research that they did is called epidemiology, which is a population study, and it's so uncontrolled that small signs of some effect have to be measured against the nature of the research itself and the methodology. And there's no way that the epidemiology that the EPA uses can prove anything, and they admitted it under oath. We sued them about the human experiments at the University of North Carolina, and as a part of the initial discovery in federal court, the parties are asked to give declarations under oath, a written statement of their case or their defense of the case. In this case, there were 5 EPA officials who provided declarations under oath in writing that admitted to a couple of things. First, the physician, Dr. Wayne Cascio, who was in charge of the human experiments at the University of North Carolina, admitted that 10 medical schools in the United States and 6 medical schools in foreign countries were doing human exposure experiments with air pollution. The second admission that I thought was important was Dr. Martin Case, who was the administrator of the University of North Carolina program, and he said that they did not tell people that they could die from their exposure to small particle air pollution in the